Hi, it's Corrine. Thanks so much for joining me today. I am sharing 3 handmade cards today. I only made one on camera. The second card is pretty similar to this one, and the third card, as you can see here, is super simple to make, but I'll give you a close-up of all 3 of the cards at the end of this video. So I'm using Concord 9th's freshly picked stamp and die set. They came out with this probably over a year ago, and it's the first time that I have used it. It's been in my stash for quite a while, so I was glad to have a chance to use it. With this stamp and die set, you can also make pumpkins coming out of the basket. You can also use apples. I don't know why I forgot. I meant to do the second card with apples, but I completely forgot. I had some strawberries already made, and so I just went with the strawberries. I'm using all Concord 9th cardstock, and I was trying to decide what green I wanted to use. I made one of the baskets using wheat cardstock, but for this card that I'm making on screen, I'm using lakefront. I pulled out Altenews Ways to Thank You embossing folder. I'm using this embossing folder and another embossing folder that are also new to me, so I love pulling from my stash. I've had both of these in my stash for a while. This is a 3D embossing folder, so after I ran it through my Sizzix Big Shot, I just took some Hero Hues white pigment ink and ran it across the top of the text. And it turned out really pretty. Makes it stand out just a little bit more. So using Concord 9th's Lakefront ink, I'm going to just darken the edges of this basket. Just gives it a little bit of dimension. I'm doing the top layering piece and the second piece. There's no need to do the third piece, being that you don't see it. I laid out my craft mat, and off camera I had dyed quite a few strawberries using poppy, cardstock, and cranberry. For the seeds, I'm using some Versamark watercolor or watermark ink, and this just gives it a tone on tone look. You can also use the same colored ink, like for the cranberry you could use the cranberry. You could also do black ink, whatever. You could do brown, whatever you'd like, but I thought the tone on tone looked really good together. So I'll go through and stamp out all my strawberries. Super quick, easy to do. And I made more strawberries than I needed. That's why I ended up making a third card. For the tops or the stems of these strawberries, I used artichoke cardstock. On the other card that I made off screen, I used parsley. So whatever green you like, Concord 9th's cardstocks go so well together that you really could use any green that you choose. So I finished all my berries, and I'm going to glue this top piece down. There are 2 other layering pieces besides this. As I pulled them out of my I'm using one of those little scrapbook.com crafting bins. I can't think of what they're called, that kind of holds your stuff together. So when I pulled those out, I remembered that I forgot to ink the edges of those, so I quickly took out the ink and just gave that a little bit of coloring to both the left and right side. And I'm working off a Glassboard Studio craft mat. It's a magnetic craft mat, so it's super easy to clean. I just wipe that up with some alcohol. I do have a discount code down in the description box if you're interested. It's a game changer in the craft room. So I'm placing that down with a heavy magnet. I cut out several colors of different things because I didn't know what I wanted to do color wise. So I cut out several, knowing I could make more cards with the scraps. For this, I chose to do the silver handle. I'm using a matte silver paper that I had in my stash. It's basil cardstock. Adhere just the 2 sides down, and now I'm adhering a piece of mushroom Concord 9th cardstock to the front of that just to give it a little bit of a look for the handle. This is the interactive piece. Like I was talking about, this has an interactive. You don't have to make it interactive, but I thought it was cute, super simple. And again, not sure where I wanted to go with this. I stamped out the 5 cents stamp on both wheat cardstock and Hammermill white cardstock. That's also what I used for that interactive piece, is Hammermill 80 pound. Stamped several of those. Again, I'll keep whatever I don't use for future cards. I did take my heat gun to this white embossing ink because it was still a little wet. Pigment ink takes a while to dry. Now I cut that down to size. This is going to be a standard A2 sized card, and I'm just laying it out, making sure I'm happy with it. I decided to put it on a white card base, so I'm going to go ahead and score my cardstock. And actually, this is actually a little bit larger than an A2. Sorry about that. It's 4.5 by 5 3/4. And this is going to be my matting piece, which is lakefront cardstock. I used a Spellbinders rectangle die to cut out the center of it, just so I don't waste that cardstock. And you don't have to do this, but I always cut out a scrap piece of paper to go inside of it, just so there's no... It sits flush on top of the card. So I just use cheap black cardstock for that. Add my main layer piece, and I do set this aside on some blocks to dry. In the meantime, I'm going to put my berries in the basket. I did kind of look to see if I wanted to do all the same cranberry color, but I did like the variation in the color of the strawberries. Using Barely art glue, I'm using my fine tip bottle. I'm adding a little bit of glue to the front of the strawberry and just kind of tucking them in. I'm doing 3 different rows. The first row is going to have 4 berries in it. The second row will have 3, and the top 2 will be glued to the interactive portion. So to me, it's easier to put a little bit of glue on the berry itself and then take the basket to it, kind of see what height you want. This would be fun to do with the apples as well. Like I said, I only did berries. I love anything strawberries, so I thought this was so cute. Here's where the interactive piece, you just go ahead and slide those little tabs into the front of it. You put one on the left and the one on the right. And Concord 9th has the dies emboss where it shows that you can add glue. You just don't want to glue anywhere where that interactive piece will move up and down. So now I kind of placed everything down. I made sure to push the interactive piece all the way down so I could see where the strawberries would end up being. And then I added glue to the back of the strawberry and just kind of tucked it in where it looked good. I did go ahead and add 2 more layers, another layer, so I have 2 layers total to those little stems, because that's the part that you're pulling in and out of the card. I wanted it to have a little bit more stability. So I give that just a moment to dry, and there's where I'm trying to give you a close-up where it states to use glue. And if you're using wet glue, you don't want to get over too far because you don't want it accidentally gluing your interactive piece down. So again, I'll just kind of put a magnet in place to kind of hold that so it's not moving around. I did open the pull out all the way stretched out so I could see where I wanted my final card to be. I decided to put it a little bit to the left of the card, and I'm going to add a few more berries to the right. I started to put glue, which it shows on the back as well, but quickly I decided I wanted to pop that up. So I'm going to use a paper towel, wipe that off, and add some double-sided 3D foam tape to it. I also added a little bit of glue to the top of that to give me a little bit of wiggle room. Again, I'm staying away from that interactive piece to make sure I don't accidentally glue that down. Put a magnet in place and let that give it a chance to dry. So for this card, I decided to use nutmeg cardstock for the wood stick, and then some Hammermill cardstock for the 5 cents piece. This stamp set also has a stamp that says pull me, I believe it says, that you can stamp on the 2 top berries, just so the recipient knows to pull on it, but I chose not to add that. So I lifted the handle and I'm just tucking that last berry in with a little bit of foam tape on it as well. I'm going to glue this directly down to the card base. I did not add any foam tape to that because I didn't want that interactive piece to bump into it. Same with this thanks sentiment. I cut 2 of the lakefront pieces out, but I decided I didn't want it to be bulky because, again, it's the interactive piece. So I'm going to just put 1 layer of the shadow piece. And as you can see, I cut out brown nutmeg to tie in with that stick, but I didn't like the look of it. So I cut out a black piece to see if I liked that better, and I did for the inside sentiment. I'll glue that down. I glued down a sub-sentiment that says so much, cut it out with a rectangle labels die, and I'll give that a moment to dry. That's a honeybee die set. This thanks very much is by Waffle Flower Crafts, and it's called Fruit Sentiment. I use that for the center of, or the inside of all the cards, and this heart comes in that Concord 9th stamp and die. So I stamped that out with some black ink on the lakefront card to match, and I added a few of the strawberries to the inside. I love to finish off the inside of my cards. The only time I don't finish them off is if if it's a general card and I don't know if it's going to end up being a thank you card or a birthday card. So here is the finished card, and let me give you a look at all 3 of them. This one is using another Altenew embossing folder. It's called Window Slats. And that green paper is just what I had in my stash. That's not a Concord 9th stamp. I used a honeybee die for that enjoy and a sub-sentiment there. And this one says, I would pick you every time. I used the wheat cardstock for the basket itself and added 2 strawberries to the outside. And as you saw, we put this on a white card base. I did not pop anything up with that. I glued it directly down. And I love the white embossing on top, or the white ink on top of the embossing. I think it really makes it stand out nice. This one says, thanks for all you do. They also have a teacher sentiment in there as well. So again, you could stamp that pull me on the top strawberries if you wanted, or the apples. And then being that I had so many strawberries, left over, I decided to do an all over pattern card. And I did add some thick cardstock behind it to pop that main panel piece up. I cut that smaller than my card base. And I added 2 pieces of the cardstock under it to give it a little dimension. I stamped out some black VersaFine Claire Nocturne ink on peacock cardstock. I added the You're So Sweet in peacock ink on the inside and added a strawberry to the inside. So these were super fun to make. I hope you enjoyed the process. Please check the description box for the Glassboard Studio discount if you're interested. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you consider subscribing to my channel.